Welcome to the Asset Preservation Hour. My name is Cynthia DeFazio. I'm joined today by Stewart Willis. He is the president of Asset Preservation Tax and Retirement Services. Stewart, how are you today?
I'm doing awesome. It's been quite a couple of weeks here.
It certainly has been quite a couple of weeks, and I know that you've been so extremely busy, so thank you so much for always coming in to do new shows. I know the viewers at home absolutely love the content.
Well, I'm trying. You know, I think that's one of the biggest challenges here is how do you kind of present new information, and so we're trying our hardest.
Absolutely. Well, today's topic, Stewart, taxes, and more taxes.
All right.
And this is so important for us to talk about because obviously people have a lot of questions regarding taxes. But first off, I should ask you, what's going on in the markets right now?
Oh, my goodness. As a man of leisure, I don't want to have to answer all these market questions, with Russia and Ukraine and all these things going on here. It's, my phone has been just blowing up here. Jokingly, listen, I give all of my clients, financial clients, my personal cell phone number just so if they need to reach me on a Saturday or Sunday at 10 o'clock at night, they just know how to reach me. So I love doing it, and I always, say I don't do business with people I don't like, and you shouldn't either. So it's a pleasure hanging out with my clients and taking their calls over the weekend. So, but no, we've seen some incredible volatility. Obviously, inflation is super high. We're still having massive issues with supply chain. Russia didn't help anything by invading the Ukraine, and now oil prices are skyrocketing. We have no real mechanism to up our production domestically. So you know what? We have to be prepared. Things are changing.
Absolutely, they are changing. Speaking of change, Stewart, can we talk a little bit about inflation? I know I'm kind of jumping a little bit, but that's something that we should talk about as well because people are concerned about that.
It's absolutely crazy. I mean, listen, the cost, everybody was happy because they were getting their Social Security raise of, sub 6% there. But at the real cost of inflation or the real inflation rate is now heading towards 8 or 9% by some prospects here. Even, the cost of used cars, for example, is up 40%.
Wow.
It's just unbelievable. I talked the other show about, having to go repo one of my, I gave one of my buddy's kids, one of my cars because I just wanted it out of the parking lot, out of our driveway. But I can sell it for damn near double what it was worth just a year ago. It's unbelievable. So when the repo man comes, I don't want Jared to be upset, but it's coming. But let's talk about inflation. I have a graph here I want to show you. And this graph here, it's an inflation graph that'll show you where we are. We're basically back up to where we were in the 80s. It is absolutely insane. And the cost of meat is through the roof. I know Jen Psaki has tried to kind of poo-poo the inflation here, saying a turkey's only $1 more, but at the end of the day, it's no longer transitory. Things are getting more expensive, and I would just say we have to prepare for a more expensive life moving forward. So, making sure your portfolio is ready for inflation is really, really, really important.
Stewart, I have to ask you, how many people come into the office and they're not thinking ahead for things like inflation, and you're able to share your guidance with them? Is that something that happens quite often?
Yeah, the issue right now is we're in this conflicted position right now because, people know that if they have cash off to the side, it's not keeping up with the effects of inflation. But if you would have had it in the market from January, January 1st on, you would have seen, if you just followed the S&P 500, you could be down 10, 15%, right? So does it make sense to lose 15% to feel like you're going to keep up with inflation? Probably not. So when we have this kind of stagflationary, system that's going on here, we have some real issues out there, and you need to make sure you have a plan.
So a combination, obviously, Stewart, we've got the inflation, we have taxes. It sounds like it's creating a perfect storm. Are we right on the brink of a recession?
It's funny. I have a buddy of mine who has a wealth management firm in town as well, and he sends me snippets of the TV show and makes fun of me all the time, and it's pretty funny. But he's like, "Oh, recession, you're crazy." Well, I don't know. Feels pretty close. I think we're closer to the end of this market than we are to the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And I think what's really important right now is to be able to take advantage of where we are. Everybody knows you buy low and sell high. Where are we at right now? I don't know, but you need to make sure you have a real plan when it comes to planning, and part of that planning is taxes. When you said at the beginning of the show, we're going to talk about taxes. I can talk the whole show about inflation, but what I want to try to do is make sure that people have a few options to work on, to even help themselves. If they decide that they don't want our help, try to figure it out themselves.
Absolutely. Well, Stewart, obviously we're going to open up the phone lines in a couple of minutes, but let's talk about that before we open up the phones, the difference between tax planning and tax preparation.
Yeah, so tax preparation is just the filing of taxes, going to your tax person, filing for taxes. Tax planning is actually creating a plan. It's about making sure you're taking advantage of your current tax rates, where we are today, and where we're going in the future. And we are in the most efficient tax window in history right now. But I think what's really important is to understand what our tax brackets look like. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a slide here, and I'm going to show you a little bit about taxes here. So, if you take a look at the tax brackets, this is kind of a unique approach to taxes, but the brackets are right there. And the way I look at taxes is going from 10% to 12% is a small jump. Going from that 12 to 22 is a huge jump. Going from 22 to 24 is a small jump, and going from 24 to 32 is a big jump. So you want to generally try to avoid those big jumps, Cynthia. But what I'll say is that there's a lot of landmines in the way too. It's not as simple as jumping brackets, because there's things there called IRMA, for example. So if you're 63 or older, you potentially could start affecting your Medicare costs. There could be Medicare penalties, that are right between the 22 and 24% bracket that looks backwards 2 years, but basically at 63 years old, you can start affecting Medicare penalty issues.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to understand what the brackets look like. And now what I want to show you is where we are today compared to where we were, before the Trump tax cuts. So I have another graphic here. Blue is the graphics from 2017. Red is what happened in 2018. And a lot of our clients are between that 12 and 24% tax bracket. And, we do have some that are in those ultra high brackets also. But if you take a look at the comparison there, the 22 to 24% bracket, which is really the majority of our clients, it's pretty crazy, because that 22% was 25, right? It's 25 to 33 actually. The 24 was 30 up to 33% there. So it's really high. We're at this massive discounted window, and what you have to realize, Cynthia, is that we're actually going to sunset those. So it's all going back to where it was before 2017. So it's really important over the next couple of years to have a tax plan, to really make sure that your financial advisor is talking about these things.
And we're going to sunset in 2025, English version.
At the end of 2025. So in 2026, they're gone.
Okay.
So I think it's really important to really have a plan. And what we're going to do today is we're going to offer the audience a complimentary portfolio review. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look, since we're talking about taxes, we're going to take a look at what kind of efficiencies we can find in your portfolio. Do you have a lot of deferred taxes? Do you not? Do you have any Roth conversions? Do you have any Roth accounts? Do you have any SEP, simple, 401k, TSPs, for example? But you have to take action. If you give us a call at 833-652-7829, or if you just click on our QR code right here on the bottom right of your screen there, you click on that with your cell phone, it'll take you to apsitaxes.com. What we're offering is that complimentary portfolio review. We can take a look at what kind of fees you're paying, what kind of risks you're taking in this crazy market, what kind of tax implications do we see? Do you have any tax time bombs or landmines out there that are hiding? We'll let you know. We'll give you a second opinion, but you have to take action today and give us a call or click on that QR code.
Stewart, thank you so much. To the viewers at home, the phone number to call is on your screen, and that number is 833-652-7829. We're going to take a very short commercial break, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, I'm going to talk to Stewart a little bit about Roth conversions. And could one be right for you? Stay tuned.
What happens oftentimes is we'll run into clients or potential clients that have saved all this money, but they're 75, 80 years old. They've got this big pile of money, but they're not enjoying retirement because they're so worried about running out of money that they never actually get to enjoy their life's work. And so to me, it's really rewarding to be able to create a plan so that these people can have a great time in retirement, knowing that they're not going to run out, that they're going to be fine. You know, I think it brings a smile to their face.
We get a lot of different people at a lot of different stages in their lives. And what we're able to do is, for some folks, it's able to tell them that you're on track. Keep doing what you're doing, and 15 years from now, you'll be retired and enjoying life the way you want it to be. For some people, it's people coming in and they're 3 to 5 years away from retirement, and you're able to tell them that, you know what, 5 years, 3 years, tomorrow, you're ready to go.
We are a complete shop. We handle estate planning, taxes, financial planning. We do a really in-depth cash flow analysis that is way more detailed than you'll see in the market.
Everything all in one spot, with the left hand always knowing what the right hand's doing. Because it's not just about the investments, but how's that going to affect your taxes? It's not where are you going to be 5 years from now, 15 years from now. And it's that back and forth full view of what the clients, not only today, but tomorrow and their legacy down the road is going to be, that really sets us apart.
And welcome back to the Asset Preservation Hour. My name is Cynthia DeFazio, and I'm joined today by Stewart Willis. He is the president of Asset Preservation Tax and Retirement Services. Stewart, a great show we're having today talking about such an important topic, taxes. We took a look at the different tax brackets. I wanted to ask you a question. How can you help people that are within those different brackets? Is that when something like a Roth conversion would come into play?
Yeah, so, we've talked about Roth conversions quite a bit, but there's a ton of tools there. So, having a tax office is not just about tax preparation, it's about tax planning. And what we do is there are a couple tools. We try to exhaust every possibility we have. For example, Roth conversions, right? So what a Roth is, just to make sure we're all talking the same language, is an account that you don't get a deduction for at the time you contribute into it, but when you withdraw it, all of the principal and all of the interest that it's gained, or all of the gains, are tax-free. With a 401k or an IRA, that's a classical traditional IRA or 401k or thrift savings plan or 403b or 457, you are getting a deduction for putting that money away today. But Cynthia, the problem is you're creating this tax time bomb, right? Because one day you're going to have to pay taxes on that. With a Roth, you don't have any of that. With a Roth, you don't get the deduction today, but when you withdraw it, it's tax-free. So why does that matter? Well, because what people don't consider is that, when they retire, generally the kids have moved out, they've lost most of their deductions, the house is closer to getting paid off, so you may not have that deduction, which, pretty much got phased out during the Trump tax cuts anyways. But, oftentimes your expenses go down, your deductions go away, and yet the income may remain somewhat similar. It all depends on your situation. But what a Roth does is that it's basically invisible to Social Security tax. So for most couples, Social Security is a huge benefit to them. It accounts for between $800,000 and $1.5 million of income if they lived in normal mortality tables and they made an average income for our clients. The issue is that Social Security was never meant to be taxed, but it became taxable in 1983 by Ronald Reagan, and then Bill Clinton made it more taxable. So people, when they're planning, they ignore Social Security. A lot of these advisors never even talk about when should they take it, when should they delay it, what's the purpose of it. And that's all part of a tax plan, because it's not just an income plan. A lot of these advisors that are trying to sell lifetime income, guaranteed 7%, guaranteed 10%, there's a catch. Trust me. How the heck are you going to pay a 7 or 10% income or 7 or 10% interest during these times when the 10-year treasury is around 2.5%? It's impossible. Remember, they're conflating, they're tricking you with words where it's 10% income, not 10% interest. So income is what you take, interest is what you make. And that's important. Accumulation, growth of that money is the most important thing.
Sure. Well, Stewart, if taxes are so important, why aren't more advisors talking about it?
Well, I think the nice thing is that there's been a couple advisors that, have radio shows and TVs that have kind of followed our message and are starting to talk about it. But most of them are actually prohibited from talking about taxes because these big box firms just aren't allowed to. They're prohibited from giving tax advice. They say, hey, they know a Roth is good for you, but then they'll say, the client will say, hey, I listened to this guy on TV talking about Roth conversions. Let's talk about it. He's like, yeah, that's a great idea. You know what? You should talk to your CPA and find out how much you can, put away. Well, then the CPA says, well, go talk to your financial advisor. So what happens is the right hand never knows what the left hand's doing. The CPA never talks to the financial advisor never talks to the CPA, and then nothing ever gets done. And you have this massive tax time bomb waiting for retirement. And I'm telling you, we are in that most efficient window in history. If you don't have a plan right now, if you are not taking advantage over the next 3 years, you are absolutely missing out. Last year we had a big scare with Build Back Better, right? And I don't mean it's good or bad. I'm not making any political commentary. I'm simply saying that taxes were looking to dramatically increase for a lot of people, and they didn't, right? Obviously, Kirsten Sinema fought against it, pretty hard. She didn't, she stood up here in Arizona and said that I don't think it's right for Arizona. But who knows? Things may change.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to take advantage of where we are now and to make sure that if you're dealing with an advisor that doesn't talk about tax, that you reach out to someone that does. And I think it's important because remember, we're all making money by managing money. And the question is, what do you get in exchange for that? We're in talks with a pretty big firm locally here that wants us to start talking to their clients about tax. And, it's a neat opportunity because I think they're realizing that, you need to make sure you're a holistic planner, that you take a look at everything.
That makes sense, Stewart. Well, I know that you have a very special offer to present to the viewers at home. Let's talk about what that is before we reopen the phone lines.
Sure. So what we're offering today is that complimentary portfolio review. And in that complimentary portfolio review, we'll take a look at what kind of tax issues we see. What kind of risks are you taking? Are you too risky in this crazy environment that we're in right now? You need to know what's possible. We can replicate what your current portfolio would have done in 2008. We can do back testing. We have a ton of those cool tools that you have to take action on to get those. If you give us a call, 833-652-7829, we'd be glad to give you a second opinion. But you do have to take action. You can either call that number or click on that QR code. We'd be glad to help.
Stewart, thank you so much. To the viewers at home, the phone number to call is on your screen, and that number is 833-652-7829. We're going to take a very short commercial break, but don't go anywhere. I have so much more with Stewart when we return.
Your investment should reflect your concerns with the market. As prices continue to increase for everyday items, you may be wondering if your investments can keep up with inflation. Will your investment remain strong, even if the American dollar weakens? Introducing the Foundation's inflation-sensitive portfolio, built on established corporate stocks, while including alternative investment focuses such as real estate, alternative currency, and precious metals to provide diversification. This portfolio seeks to provide you with a strategy that rises to the challenges seen across the market today. Invest in a portfolio designed as an answer to the growing concern of inflation. Discover more today.
And welcome back to the Asset Preservation Hour. My name is Cynthia DeFazio, and I'm joined today by Stewart Willis. He is the president of Asset Preservation Tax and Retirement Services. Stewart, I want to ask you, what kind of strategies are available to build a tax-free estate, if you will?
Well, I think tax-free is a really difficult thing in most situations. There's a lot of kind of clickbait out there that says, tax-free income, tax-free. Usually when you hear tax-free, someone's trying to sell you a big life insurance policy. They're just using code word for, these, tax efficient, or tax-free. It's just most of it are gimmicks that are trying to sell insurance products.
Okay.
But I think what's important when you create a tax efficient estate is to make sure you look at those things like Roth conversions that we talked about earlier, but also to make sure you take a look at what kind of capital gains do you have, what kind of deferred losses do you have in there. And as a tax office, what we can do is we can actually take a look at your tax return, look inside of it, see if there's any carry forward capital losses, and see if we can take advantage of that by different harvesting methods. And Cynthia, I'll tell you an example. I had a client that came in, saw our TV show, and they said, Stewart, listen, I really enjoy what you're talking about, but I only invest in things with dividends. And I said, okay, well, tell me why. Well, you know what? Because it's predictable. I know what we're going to get, et cetera. Well, when we sign up for a portfolio review, clients bring in their, I say, bring in your tax returns, let's take a look at what's going on. And I flipped to halfway down the return, and I saw this guy had a $500,000 carry forward capital loss. And I said, okay, well, I see this. And he's like, that's a mistake. I haven't ever lost that much money. And, I said, okay, well, let me verify this. We called his CPA, and his CPA said, yeah, man, this guy has literally the worst financial advisor in history. He needs to fire that guy. Well, this client managed his own investments. So a lot of people are kind of afraid to say that they've taken all these losses.
Yeah.
But what I said to him, I said, sir, you're chasing dividends here. What we may need to do is chase a growth strategy. What do you think about this? We have $500,000 that we can take out tax-free from long-term capital losses. And there were some short-term capital losses there as well. And I said, if you're chasing dividends, you're going to have to pay taxes on all of those dividends at your current rate. Why don't we look at this? Let's look at a capital gain strategy where we can harvest once a year all of your gains, and you have a $500,000 of free, a free income there. And he's like, Stuart, I never thought about that.
That's a great idea.
So many people are stuck in their ways and their strategies that sometimes you need to think outside the box. And I think, I tell people all the time, I think for the first decade of my career, I feel like I was faking it. Like before I owned a tax office, I had no idea about all of these different, carry forward capital losses, and so forth. And I think it's really, really important to make sure you have these strategies in place to, to take a look at, to make sure that if there's gains out there you can harvest, does it make sense? Are there losses we can harvest? Because sometimes strategically it makes sense. And, that's what December and, October, November, December is for, is we always save our tax planning for the end of the year. Now, we'll look at opportunities if we see massive dips for Roth conversion, but generally we like to save all that tax planning for October, November, December, so that we can look back on the year. What if you get a big bonus at work and your taxes go up? We don't want to do a Roth conversion in January usually, because what if you get a big bonus, or you win the lottery, or you win money at the casino and get that big 1099, right? We like to be backwards looking on the year to see what's already occurred.
Sure.
But it's really important to have that tax plan.
Well, I should ask you, Stuart, in the viewing audience, why don't they just ask their current tax advisor for tax help?
Well, once again, I mean, most of them are prohibited from getting that advice. They're, the advisors are under strict regulations at most of these big box firms from not talking about it. So, at Asset Preservation, listen, tax season is a nightmare. We're going to do, I think, 850 tax returns or so this year, right around there. It's a lot of work. It's a massive staff to be able to do that kind of, tax preparation. Most of these people don't want to kind of go through the trouble of that. The other thing is that for our tax clients, or for our financial clients, we do taxes, at about $199, for the average tax return. Some are a little more, but most are around there. We only do taxes for our financial clients now, unless it's a VIP customer that brings his buddy in. Usually we just, we're swamped on the tax side. But we don't make a living doing taxes.
Yeah.
Most of these firms, God bless them, they're out there, doing taxes, and that's how they feed their family. That's not how we feed our family. We do that for proper planning information. It's all about the future plan,
Absolutely, it is. Well, Stewart, we have about 3 minutes left of the show, and then we're done for the week. I can't believe how fast the time goes when we're together. Any final words of wisdom and advice you'd like to give the viewers at home today?
Yeah, absolutely. What I would say is that a lot of you I know are seeking help. And a lot of you are saying to yourself, I'm not the kind of person that would call some goofy guy on the TV, because that, I don't do QVC, I don't do, any of these kind of, purchasing on TVs. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is if you need help, don't be afraid to reach out. If you just give us a call at 833-652-7829, or you click on that QR code, what I can assure you is that you'll be met by an advisor that's great, that's personable, and there's no pressure. We're not the right fit for everybody, and you don't want to be pressured into being with an advisor that you're not comfortable with. And I'm telling you, I am the same person in person that I am on TV. And so if you're annoyed by me on TV, don't call me, call Cynthia. Are you giving out your number on TV?
I am not, Stewart.
Okay.
I'm not going to do that today.
Just throwing it out there. It's available, but I was thinking, but if you're not open to it. But no, give us a call. We'd be glad to give you a second opinion. We're great people. We like working with other great people. It doesn't hurt to get that second opinion. We're in crazy times right now, and oftentimes people feel completely lost. They know their advisor isn't reaching out to them. They know that their portfolio is the same portfolio they had a year ago. And if you are in the exact same positions a year ago that you are in today, that's a problem. We're in a different world now, right? If there aren't changes being made that you understand, then maybe it's time for you to get that second opinion. But you have to take action. I think it's really important for people to just, take control of of their situation.
Absolutely, Stewart. And you mentioned having a second opinion, because obviously it would be like going to the doctor. And if you received one diagnosis, you want to make sure that's the correct diagnosis by seeing someone else. So you are a huge fan of the second opinion.
Yeah, and my good buddy Brian Corwanta, a great advisor out of Pennsylvania, always says you can't get a second opinion from the one who gave you the first.
Yeah.
So you need to reach out to somebody. If it's not us, find someone you like, somebody you trust, and get a second opinion. We're in crazy times right now. It's really important to get that second opinion, because if you're close to retirement, now is not the time to gamble on it.
Stewart, thank you so much for another amazing episode this week. To the viewers at home, most specifically, we'd like to thank you for spending time with us today. That number is 833-652-7829. Any questions about how to plan your perfect retirement, Stewart has the answers for you. Again, don't miss the opportunity to call into the number on your screen, 833-652-7829. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we'll see you back 1 week from today. Take care.